How's it going, gamers? So I just recently finished the Honkai Star Rail story, and I just wanted to take a minute and give it like a short little review. Maybe I'll give it a longer review in the future on my main channel where I do video essays. But for now, I just want this to be kind of a roundup of everything that I think, how it compares to the other aspects of storytelling that they had in Genshin Impact and Honkai Impact, and see how it holds up as a story itself on its own. So when I'm talking about the introduction story, I'm talking about not only the ship, but also the first planet that you go to, because the first planet that you go to, they explain a large majority of the mechanics that they use in the entirety of the game. The first ship is more of just a preamble. It kind of just shows you how the game plays and just the basics of the game, but the actual first planet tells you everything that you need to know, what you're farming, what your end game is going to be, what your weekly bosses are going to be, and just what the story is like in the game. So the game at the very start of the game, it starts with a giant bang. Just like Honkai Impact, it starts going with just absolute mayhem. You don't know what's happening. You start playing the game as two characters that you don't even get to play in the future of the game. You just go in just playing whatever, and they just teach you the game playing these random two characters, and they expect you to remember their names and another person's name that they're talking to and the enemies that you're fighting. And that's one thing that they really go into hard here, and it's very overwhelming. That is one thing that I can say is bad about the story, is that they throw a lot at you. They give you like the first place that you go to, which is the ship where you basically spawn in at. They give you the first two characters that you meet and you play as. Then they give you another character that they're talking to over the comm, talking about some like predestiny kind of thing. Then they give you like 5 other characters that they expect you to know the name of and or remember them. Then you go to a ship and they expect you to remember like 3 more names, including like topics about world-ending things that are causing cancers on the planets called Stellarons. Then they expect you to know about these gods and remember their names and how they influence the worlds and the galaxies, and they have corporations, and it's just so overwhelming that it gets to the point where you just want to take a breather, but they just keep throwing stuff at you. But once you get to the actual first planet and you start actually playing the story, it is phenomenal. So the Genshin had a really bad problem where it comes to you having to talk to random NPCs that you care nothing about. There was so much filler. You're just talking, you can't skip anything, and it was just absolutely boring. So the way that they fixed that is they took all the complaints and they said, yeah, we won't do that again. We promise. Yata desune, we learned. And they basically made it to where you are following 2 other companions constantly. You are learning more about them. Both of them have mysterious pasts, which, I mean, is par for the course for these kind of things. But it makes them more interesting as characters. So those 2 characters, kind of like the Paimon of this universe, they're both the characters that kind of speak for you and they give you their insight, but they're by far not annoying at all. Now, the only character that I would say is kind of like Paimon, you go and you don't even have to talk to that much. You meet before and after missions, and sometimes you go to them and you talk to them a little bit, but overall, you never even have to really listen to him talk at all. You can just skip all of his dialogue if you wanted to, but even then, he's adorable. Just in small bursts, he's an enjoyable character. I like him. He's cute. Just like how Paimon should have been if she would have just shut the fuck up. Now, even when I'm talking about the characters, I don't want to just talk about the main cast. I want to talk about the first planet that you go to and their characters, because you're not talking to NPCs, like I said. You're actually talking to these characters that you can wish for in the banners, which first of all makes you want to wish for them more because you learn more about them and you like them as characters, which makes their money go up because you're wishing more. I mean, it's basic science and math. I mean, if you like something, you're gonna want to pull it. And so they really go hard into it, because you have to remember they're going between planets. So this is their one shot. We don't know if they're going to go back to planets in the future. They probably will at some point go back to certain planets because of certain events, but it really feels like once they're finished with one place, they just keep going, they keep moving. So this is their one time. This planet is their one chance for them to actually give you like a really good story there, and then they're never going back to it. So they really try hard to get you to like everyone there, know their experiences, know more about them, just develop every character that you would wish for, and just have them be interesting. And that's how they did filler too. They did filler right for once. Instead of just letting you talk to some random person, they build on the relationships between two characters, which is extremely important for the story itself, because they are integral characters, because their relationship with one another changes the outcome of the story and whether or not certain things happen. And it's incredible. This is what a story is supposed to be. It was a little overbearing at times when it comes to the underworld, because there's two sections, and so most of the time spent was in the underworld, and that portion was very heavily character oriented, because all the actions that they had there was developing everyone before they went to the top in order to continue the story. So a lot of the actions down below kind of felt monotonous at points, but that was okay because we were learning new mechanics. They had new kind of story beats that was happening that made it everything fine. You met new characters that were interesting and actually cool to learn more about, instead of just having old man number 5782 tell you about how this moisture cream he needs for his toes is getting old and he needs you to go to the mountain so that you can refresh it, and then you get to it and then it's pointless because it's actually the wrong mountain and he already had the moisture cream in his bottom drawer. He just forgot it there. So it's actually important stuff. It's not nothing burgers. Now let's talk shortly about the combat and how some of these combats integrated into the story, and they did great. The boss fights were incredible. The final boss had incredible music. It had incredible just features. Animation was beautifully done. They looked perfect. Exactly how I want a final boss to look like. They had set pieces in the final boss that played perfectly into one another, and it just made the scenes just extravagant. It went above and beyond anything we've experienced before in at least the Genshin series. Now, I stopped playing Genshin once they got to Sumeru. I played a little bit of Sumeru and then I stopped, but a lot of what Genshin was a lot of looks and not enough filling. So they'd have really cool set pieces. They'd have a little bit of mechanics to make the battles slightly different, but most of it resulted in the exact same things. It was just you put on a shield and you press the hit button. It was not a lot of really changing anything with your builds or anything how you played. But in this game, the way that they combined the aspects of gameplay with the aspects of just the encounter and how the bosses work, it changes how you play entirely. There's multiple boss fights that you have to play different from one another, because you can't just do the same thing over again or you will lose. There's certain debuffs that you have to hit certain bosses with, or they just won't do anything. You will be doing barely any damage. There are certain fights that have certain mechanics that you will have to work around, or you just won't be doing the optimal amount of DPS, and you might even lose, because this game, surprisingly enough, is pretty hard. Now, if you spend $1 million, it's not going to be hard, but a lot of the fights, just from a free-to-play perspective or even a light spender perspective, are enjoyably hard. It's not impossible. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to come back to this kind of difficulty. Or maybe I'm going to have to level something up. I'm going to have to look at my builds. I'm going to have to look at my characters differently. And it makes the story more enjoyable, because there's things that you can look forward to. There's things that you can build towards and work around that makes all these boss fights more engaging. Now, like I was saying before, the music is beautiful. It's super well done. All the music pieces are very good. I really wish there was some sad scenes that they were just playing open world music. I really wish some of those scenes had sadder music, but overall, really good music. The voice acting for every character kind of hit and miss, but for the most part, I'd say 80% of the cast did a very good job. There's some characters in games that I cannot stop thinking that somebody is behind a mic recording it. For example, Paimon. Anytime I hear Paimon's voice, all I can think of is that woman standing behind a microphone making the most high-pitched voice she can possibly do. And it's just, it takes me out of the game. But all these characters, I feel like they would sound exactly how they sound, except for maybe one or two. They all sound very good. Now let's briefly talk about the pacing, because I've talked about it before. There are some pacing problems. For example, the underworld kind of slows down, but the overall story progression is very good. There was some hard caps that was about adventure rank 23 and I think 29. They wouldn't let you play any more of the story until you got to those points. But thinking about future stories, they're probably not going to have this problem anymore, because you're going to have been playing a lot between each story release, so you're not even going to notice these hard caps. These are just for the openings, and they weren't even that hard of a cap. They were just a little bit of a cap. Like, I played some story missions. Maybe you wait like one more day if you have to, maybe two if you don't play a lot, and then you were good to go. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. It just lets you enjoy more of the environment and the game itself. Now I'm going to take a moment to touch on some of the companion stories, because they actually surprised me. Their dialogue was fully voiced. It let me know more about the character that I didn't know before. It was basically like they introduced so many characters and fleshed out a lot of the main cast that some of the background characters that are equally important just didn't have enough time to shine. So these scenes just, it did really well for me to know more about them and to just like them more. Like, I like some of the characters more because I played these companion scenes, and that's surprising. I'm amazed how well they were able to do a main story and also companion stories that, for the most part, some of the Genshin stories was, let's go hang out at a flora shop, and how about you buy me a gift and let's pretend like this is a virtual dating sim. So I'm very happy that they actually took these characters seriously and not just the waifu bait that Genshin was. Now, if you ever seen my previous video, which I made on a different channel, my video essay channel, I did a 1-hour review on the Inazuma's story, and I rated that 8 stars. Now, that was being very generous because of some of the character stories that they wrapped up. They did very beautifully. The overall story would probably be more of a 7 to a 7.5, now looking back at it with a new perspective. But overall, I would give the Honkai story a 8 to a 9, so I guess an 8.5, leaning more towards a 9, but just not there yet. If they were able to take the story just a tad bit slower for certain plot points, instead of focusing so much on the characters themselves and instead focusing on the overall story for that planet, it would have been a lot better, just because I didn't understand certain things until the very final boss was killed. And even then, I sometimes didn't get actual understanding of everything about that subject until I played a completely different thing, which was the roguelike that they added, because the roguelike expanded on some of the gods of that universe, which I didn't even know there were gods until playing the roguelike. It was very confusing to play the start of it and to not understand a lot of stuff, but it really let me understand a lot more. And if the main story could have done that, it would have been an even better introduction story instead of having to get that information from side content. Now, I hope you liked the video. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, Johnny. To celebrate, I'll be waiting till we make it. Oh, we will see. Come with me, take the journey. We will see. Come with me, take the journey.